Hey there, welcome on the spot. I'm here with the legend of De La Salle. You might have known him or seen around town, Frank Allocco. Coached at De La Salle for, I think, 18 years in the six at Northgate, but he's a guest on the spot. He's at USF now, and floor is yours, Frank. Go and do yourself. We'll go from there.
Hey, it's great to be here with you, Steve. It's really a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate what you're doing at De La Salle right now.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, I want to give a little history of what you did and a little background what you are now, what you're doing.
Yeah, so I've been involved in sports my whole life. I played football and basketball at Notre Dame, played three sports at New Providence High School in New Jersey, moved out to California after college and started a basketball camp, which is still going 46 years. It's the fourth oldest camp in America. That's basketball. Teaching of the game has always been my passion. I was raised by some wonderful coaches going back to Little League up through Ara Parsegian at Notre Dame. And culture has always been my thing. So I love coaching just for the culture creation. And I kind of preach that in everything that I do, whether it's my camps, whether it's coaching, whether it's in leadership at USF. It all stems around culture. I raised my kids first. I did not go into coaching right away, even though I wanted to. I wanted to coach since I was a kid. I always couldn't wait to be done playing so I could start coaching. So it's always been in my blood. I waited till my children were grown. My daughter was a senior at Concord High, and I applied for the Northgate job and surprisingly got it. Um, then sort of watched her play her senior year, and then would drive over to Northgate. The girls played before the boys. I'd go catch her and then drive over to Northgate. Did that for a year, and my son was going into eighth grade at that time. So I felt like, I did a good job of raising my kids and being present for the family. And then I was able to pursue my passion, which I felt like we were in a pretty good position with that.
Gotcha. Good. So you ready for the spot? You ready to go with these questions? Go from there. All right. Uh, what are your thoughts on the real estate market? I know if you follow a bit, what are your predictions? What do you think of whole real estate and stuff like that around it?
Well, I mean, I think things are going to continue to grow. Obviously it's people need to live in wonderful places. We're lucky to live in a great area. So the values out here, I think, are always going to be high because it's a beautiful place to live. In fact, I was talking to a friend of mine just last week, and she asked me, if you could live anywhere in the country, where'd you live? I said, California,
Yeah.
and second choice, California, but I just think we live in a wonderful place and the prices reflect that. But then again, it's always a good investment to get in the real estate market and watch your investment grow and enjoy your home. And that's the most important thing, is to live in a beautiful place and enjoy your home. But I think it's obviously a great investment area too, not only as a single family home, but to go out and buy property, I think is always a wonderful thing to do, because it's one of the few things we know is going to continue to grow. And even in unstable times, economic times, the real estate market always seems to hold.
No, it is. It's a lifestyle. I tell people it's within 3 hours you can go to the water, mountains, lakes, and camping and sports venues. So you have a lot of choices here, based on the states.
So
But yeah,
true.
totally. Let me ask you this: you want to share a struggle um, you went through in life, or coaching or something, whatever?
Yeah, probably the biggest thing, probably my greatest challenge, and probably something that I grew the most from, was two things. Being an All-American quarterback in high school, my dream was to go to Notre Dame. I had told everybody in my life that I was going to go to Notre Dame and be a quarterback. I was in love with Terry Hanratty and Joe Theismann were my heroes. And every decision I made from the time I was a young kid in sixth grade was to go to Notre Dame. I don't drink to this day. I don't do drugs. I just pretty every decision I made in my life was just how to go to Notre Dame. And it became a lifestyle. Right. And I continue to live that lifestyle today. So everything I did was to go to Notre Dame. And here I was getting recruited by everybody in the country. And Notre Dame was right at the front of that. And then my first game of my senior year, I played 2 minutes. He threw a touchdown pass. I was 2 for 2 with a touchdown pass. And the second time we got a ball, I ran the option and ran into a defensive back and snapped my collarbone in half, and just felt like my dream was over. And I remember going to the hospital with my dad and my brother Jerry, and I was crying and knew that the Notre Dame dream was over. And my father, the very religious guy, he said to me, Frank, this is God's way of telling you to play basketball. Concentrate on basketball, get healthy, and have a great senior year. I was being more recruited for basketball than I was football, to tell you the truth. And so, but that experience, I kind of made up my mind I was never going to play football again after that, and just concentrate on basketball. I had a great senior year. I averaged 29.1 points per game and was being recruited by Duke and Princeton and a number of other great schools. And then Notre Dame came to watch me play basketball. And the assistant coach was there, Joe Yonto. He came in the locker room. He said, "You got to take a trip to Notre Dame. We need you to play quarterback there based on my basketball." And I didn't want to go, but I went on a trip to Notre Dame and was overwhelmed when I got on the field and met my hero, Ara Parsegian. But then he had me kneel in the huddle, and then he had me stand next to him and imagine I was the quarterback at Notre Dame Stadium. And I saw the front four come at me. Walt Patulski, I think he was the number one pick in the draft. Mike Kadish, Greg Marks, Fred Swenson. These are all NFL guys coming at me, who's 167 pounds, and I almost fainted. And I went back to my room and said, I I said a prayer. I said, "God, you got to get me out of this. I can't play football at Notre Dame. I want to play basketball." And that night I went to the grotto at Notre Dame. I was lost. It started to snow, and I got caught up in the beauty of Notre Dame. The snow was everywhere, and I saw thousands of candles in the distance, and I walked over, and there was the grotto, and I knelt down and I said a prayer. I said, "Dear God, you got to help me get out of this. I've been telling people I'm coming since I was a kid. I don't want to disappoint people, but I'm not playing football." And went to bed that night, woke up in the morning, met Coach Parsegian. He said, "You remind us of Joe Theismann. I'm offering you a full scholarship. Take it home. Talk to your parents." I said, "I don't have to talk to anybody. I'm coming." And I really believe that was sort of the path that I was supposed to go. It was divine intervention. I was meant to be a Notre Dame guy and a Notre Dame Med. To this day, it's one of the proudest things in my life to be there. And then when I got there, I was the ninth string quarterback because I didn't play my senior year. I worked my way up to number two. And I waited patiently behind Tommy Clements, who was an amazing quarterback, led us to the national championship in 1973. And then I was going to be the starter. Eric got me an extra year. 75, I was set to be the starter. I had a great spring practice going, and I separated my shoulder when I was rolling out. Had surgery on my right arm, which set me back. And that was a very hard thing to wait that long and go through the adversity that I did. But I have to tell you, Steve, it was probably the greatest thing that ever happened to me because I learned so much about dealing with adversity. And the beauty of my journey was what I did to come back. Every morning I would go to the rehab and do exercise with my arm. I would swim. I'd lift weights. I'd throw 5 yards and be very excited about it. And I ran the stadium steps every day. And probably one of the greatest lessons of my life was running the steps every single day. It was hot, and I'd hit that 38th gate one day, and I was going to quit because I was dead tired. And I looked over at the entrance to the stadium, and there was a couple dropping off their son for Notre Dame. And I had my jersey on, and I said to myself, they know I'm the Notre Dame quarterback. And I sprinted those last few gates, even though I was going to quit a moment earlier. And I ran over to those people, and I introduced myself, and I welcomed them to Notre Dame. And it was later when my senior year ended that I got a beautiful letter from my best friend's mother and Mrs. Lesnowich. And she wrote to me and said, "It was just excruciating to watch your career. You were always right there, and then an injury would happen or something would happen. We would have probably been the best team in the state my senior year in high school. We had beat two people in preseason scrimmages that went on to win the state. We beat them decisively, but it didn't happen, and then I waited patiently at Notre Dame and it didn't happen." And I wrote back to her and I said, "The beauty of sport is the man who runs the stadium steps when the seats are empty. Anyone can run them when they're full." And I realized that, the journey was what was special for me, that all I did to try to come back. And, Joe Montana was one of my backups,
Yeah.
and I look at that situation and say, well, you could have been, no, I could have been what I am. I think the path that I was supposed to take is the path that was right for me. And I'm proud of the adversity that led me to a wonderful, wonderful spot in my life.
Good thoughts. Good share. Let me ask you this: do you have a quote that you want to share with us that you live by or heard that sticks out in your mind for an
Well,
audience to listen to?
yeah, sure. Live by it. Adversity has the effect of eliciting talents, which under prosperous conditions might have remained dormant. That has been my sort of my mantra in the way I approach my life. And from a coaching point of view, I have it right here on my desk. There's a destiny that makes us brothers. No one walks their path alone. All that we put into the lives of others comes back into our own. So I kind of live by those two things. I embrace adversity. I love adversity, actually, because it makes you better. It makes you stronger. I encourage the teams and the
Totally.
players that I coach to embrace it. And from a leadership point that, we never know the difference we're going to make. I've always said it wasn't my job to be the man. It was my job to prepare the man, to prepare kids to go and do be college coaches and be NBA coaches and be great fathers and be great business leaders. So I've been very fortunate.
Great, great thoughts. Let me ask you this: is there a mistake you regret you did in real estate uh, down the road or in the past?
Yeah, yeah, there is because I've told everybody that I've ever talked to in my life to go buy property,
Yeah,
and I never did. So my high school coach always thanks me. He says, "You made me wealthy because you told me what to do." I said, "Yeah, I'm really good at telling people what to do, but I just don't do it myself." So in retrospect, I wish I would have invested in real estate and bought some rental properties or others.
gotcha.
But that is, I wish I could have done that because I believe in the market.
Cool. Let me ask you this: so, what do you watch nowadays as far as shows on Netflix or stream? What do you like watching? I got sports. But what are you watching today? Or
The soccer show, Ted Lasso. I love
Ted
that
Lasso?
show.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was
Okay.
really good. Right now, I'm watching The Point, Running Point. I was watching that show on Netflix right now.
Okay.
Sort of based on the Lakers ownership
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
I watch a lot of movies. I like motivational stuff. The Natural and Gladiator, Braveheart, things that really inspire me. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I try to learn. I try to learn as much as I can. I drive to USF every day, so I try to put a YouTube video on and try to learn something about New York City or about the Renaissance. I really have been a lifelong learner. I love watching things that might make me better or might provide me with some inspiration that I could go and share with kids.
Gotcha. Okay. So, Frank, you get introduced out to the audience. What's your walk up song? What are you coming out to?
I'd say the Rockies theme song. I mean, there's
Yeah.
some, and I would love to end with probably the Braveheart. The ending song of that. Those things
Yeah.
really teach me. And another song. I do a lot of writing. I've written a book. I wrote a book about my mother
Okay.
and my mother's memoirs, and I'm kind of writing another one right now on values for kids. I'm pretty excited about that. But when I write, I listen to Forrest Gump's Suite. And Forrest Gump Suite is a beautiful musical that I could write anything when that's playing in the background. I write a Christmas poem every year, and before when I do that, I sit here and I have that on a loop, and I just play it and play it. Music really touches me. And at De La Salle, we had great warm up music. I was always proud that we didn't do what other people did. In fact, Greg St. Jean, a De La Salle grad who's coaching the Lakers, just sent me a video of they're using the De La Salle warm ups music
Okay.
down there, and he had another.
Montage and the other
Yeah,
one, the bagpipes. Yeah.
yeah, they were doing the 24. He said this other videos playing 24 hours of Rocky climbing the mountain. So it's kind of fun to see that inspiration that we draw from movies or from music.
Totally. I see it too. Yeah. You see, I think stadiums and stuff, arenas have it. But yeah, totally have that music. Yeah. Let me ask you this: who's on your Mount Rushmore? Say you want to take a crack at basketball or football? One of those. If you could pick your top players.
Wow. I argue this a lot. I think Will
Yeah.
Chamberlain was amazing.
Yeah.
I just think that guy was one of the greatest athletes to ever live, led the league in scoring. And then they said, well, all you do is shoot. And he said, okay, what's the record for assists? I'll go break that. And, I mean, the guy averaged 50 points a game and 20 rebounds. And he was going to box Muhammad Ali. I mean, he was a track athlete. And then he was a great beach volleyball player for his whole life. So I don't know. I mean, they get caught up the fact that, the Russell teams consistently beat them, but on an
Yeah.
individual basis, he was quite a player. And, the surrounding cast wasn't as strong as it could have been, but I really do admire him, and at the football level, you can't argue Joe Montana's success in the Bay Area, Tom Brady, at the college level, this Jeremiah Love that comes out of Notre Dame. I
Yeah.
mean, this kid's
Yeah.
special. I haven't seen a running back since I played back in the 70s with Johnny Rogers, who was such a multi-purpose game changer. This kid is special, and I really enjoyed watching him play. I love Notre Dame football. I don't watch a lot of sports on television, but I do watch Notre Dame football. I tape it, I watch it. And this CJ Carr is really special. In fact, I'm going out to Notre Dame twice this year to catch some games. Yeah, that would be my favorites. Mickey Mantle was my hero growing up. My all-time hero, probably, and the guy that I tried to pattern myself after was Bill Bradley at Princeton. I was in New Jersey growing up as a kid, and I came across his book, A Sense of Where You Are, which I have right over here. A Sense of Where You Are. It really talks about Bradley's senior year. And it was the coolest thing in the back of the book. They asked him, what are you going to be? And he said, I'm going to be a senator from Missouri. And of course, he became a senator from New Jersey, and he ran for president. But he gave up, being a first round draft pick to go and be a Rhodes Scholar. So his sense of perspective, where sports plays a role, what role does it play in your life? He had a really good feel for that. And I always admired that. And I also liked the fact that he had a plan. Like I told you, I had a plan since I was a kid to go to Notre Dame and decisions. And he had the same thing. Like, what do I do? And then I think that's what I've encouraged kids to do is have a goal. And then you got to live the lifestyle. You're at De La Salle coaching. And, if you want to win a state championship, this is what we got to do.
Yeah,
And
totally.
and if you're
Every
really
year. Yeah.
sincere, if you're sincere about your goals, then what you do isn't perceived as work. It's just what you do to become special. And
Yeah,
so
totally.
my role models have provided that for me, guys that I could look up to and try to emulate what they've done.
Yeah. Good points. Let me ask you this. So who is your GOAT? I guess you're saying Chamberlain. I mean Russell.
Yeah, I
You're
mean,
saying
Chamberlain, Jordan,
yeah,
Chamberlain, you got Jordan up there, Kobe. There's a number of them, but I just think Wilt Chamberlain could do anything he wanted to do on a basketball court. He really is. I become a LeBron fan because, Greg St. Jean just consistently tells me how hard he works. He said, you would love this guy. He's one of us, Greg always says, that he gets to the arena early and he eats right and he takes a nap and he ice bath and heat bath and lifts weights and always trying to get better and obviously doing this for 23 years, whatever it is. It's pretty remarkable. He's won at different spots, so pretty impressive what he's done. So he belongs up in that conversation too.
yeah. Let me ask you this: who's the best player you played against in a sport that you played? Do you remember growing?
And that's a great question. I'd say in football, it was Johnny Rodgers. I mean, he was certainly an amazing football player. They beat us in the Orange Bowl pretty significantly. And the basketball court, I'm trying to think of college. We played North Carolina. Um, I don't remember who was on those teams back then, but probably Bill Walton when he was at
Yeah.
UCLA. I mean, he was an
Okay.
amazing player too. I enjoyed watching him. I was a big UCLA fan my whole life and just admired those teams very much. But Walton was pretty special at the college level. One of the I mean, 21 for 22 against Memphis was probably one of the greatest individual efforts I ever saw. He would be in my top college players along with Maravich and Bradley, who would be right up there with him and Kareem. They'd be on my Mount Rushmore of college basketball.
Okay. Cool. Well, I'm gonna ask you some coaching questions. What do you like about coaching from the past? And then you've been coaching 18 years, but what do you like about coaching when you did it? That you remember from
And
it?
culture creation is my favorite
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm a great X's and O guy. I just think I get kids to love each other and play for each other and sacrifice for each other and commit. And those are all skills that they are going to need to be great dads, great moms, or whatever they choose to be. So the culture creation aspect of it, I love. And in fact, Bob Lattiser is one of my dear friends. And when I went to USF, I rolled the dice. I went there with the expectation that Rex Walters had told me he was probably going to go to the NBA and thought I would get the job. Right. And so I rolled the dice on it and it didn't work out that way. But I was asked to not leave and stay in administration. And I remember leaving that building. I called Bob up and I said to Bob, I said, I don't know, man. I still got some coaching. I got some really innovative things I want to do with the pack line defense and the Princeton stuff that I loved. And I said, I've really got this coaching thing still. And Bob said to me, he said, coaching to you was never about winning and losing. It was about spreading the gospel. And he said, so why would you limit yourself and spread the gospel to 15 people when you can, be an administrator at USF, get involved in the youth programs, the PAL, the Parks and Recs, the CYOs, all the different things in the city, embrace your season ticket holders and get involved in the San Francisco community. He said, you could touch a lot more lives doing this. He said, you're still coaching, you're just coaching a different thing, but you are still teaching discipline and love and sacrifice. And in my role at USF, that's kind of what I do. I mean, I want to make everybody feel great. I go to a basketball game and I'll work that crowd. I make sure I see people and say hello to them and I want them to feel special. So to me, culture creation is at the core of everything I stand for.
Cool. Any tips for any young coaches out there that want to get into coaching? I mean, how do you think they should go about getting into it if they want to go that route? you know?
Yeah, I think it's expose yourself to as many coaches as you can. I mean, I think my talent was just my insecurity. Like I always wanted to get better, so I wasn't locked into one thing. I just went around and I visited colleges and, I tried to study the game. I was a real student of the game, always trying to improve. And so I worked really hard at it, just trying to get better and better. And again, there's this insecurity that I have. I'm a very driven guy, never feeling like I'm good enough. So I just keep trying to get better and trying to get better. And so that was it. Studying the game, being exposed to other programs, listening and learning. I think that's a skill that a lot of coaches today don't have. Everybody thinks they know the way and they don't want to hear it.
Yeah, yeah.
Coach Lattiser and I talk about it all the time. That sometimes we go and we speak place, people, well, you can't do that. Well, we did. We did it. We did it pretty successfully, and you can do it too. But there's a different way to do it. Is you've got to reach their heart. It's like raising a family. You know, each child has a different button. You got to find that button to inspire and motivate your child, and it's also setting a tone. You can't raise a child and then at 15 years old start changing the rules, and the kid's already trained you by then. And that's kind of what coaching is, right? You're trying to train them to think the way the program thinks. And so that starts with parenting. It starts with coaching. It starts in the classroom. It's a fascinating part about education, no matter what your particular role is.
Yeah. Let me ask you this: what are your thoughts on the NIL and the whole scholarship? Nowadays, when you played and how it was worked, what are your thoughts on the
Yeah,
whole
it's a
spectrum?
shame. It's a shame because I mean I do think the players have a right to share, in the revenue. I think that it should have been legislated earlier, so there could have been some sort of a cap on it, perhaps. But you can't blame the players for doing what they do. What's lost in this is representing your school, being a part of something. You know, I was at camp last year and we had a fourth grade girl who's really special. I mean, she's going to be a great, great player. Dad played college basketball. And I was talking to her and I said, this has changed. Your dad and I played for pride. We played because we wanted to earn a scholarship. Now it's a job. I mean, you could go out and make a lot of money. Connecticut or one of these big schools would pay you a lot of money.
Yeah,
So
2 million out here and stuff like that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, so when you feel like taking a day off, think this is my job. I gotta get to work and do it. But on the other side of the coin, we've lost that loyalty. I was at Notre Dame for one of my national championship reunions, and our captain told my brother Jerry, he said, your brother would have been a perfect NIL candidate. He was this close to Tommy Clements, backup quarterback. He said any of those schools would have paid him $1 million, to go and be their quarterback. And Jerry told me that. And I said, well, first of all, I think, he was flattering me. I don't think that's necessarily true. But if it were true, I wouldn't have left Notre Dame. $1 million wouldn't have meant anything to me. I want to be a Notre Dame man. I wanted to be educated by Ara Parsegan and Father Hesburgh. I still have their pictures right here on my wall. These are guys who were my mentors, and being around them, how do you put a price on that? But that loyalty is not there today. Kids should go in the portal. They should test the market to see what their value is. And some of it's life changing money. I hope that they're investing that money properly. You know, my
yeah,
nephew went to Notre Dame, and the first thing I told him, buy a house. I said, go buy a house in Columbus,
yeah,
Ohio, where you live, because money comes and goes, but that home's going to be there for the rest of your life. And that's a true story. I'm not just saying that, Steve, to what you might want to hear about real estate. I did tell him that. I said, put that into an asset that's real, you
yeah,
know. And so, yeah, so the NIL thing has changed the game quite, and it's also hurt the culture because the culture gets established over time. We did it at De La Salle. Our freshman team had a real important role, as did the JVs. By the time they got to me, they were a lockstep, into the culture. But how do you do that when a kid comes to you in August? And you have 2 months to get him prepared? I also think it affects the quality of play. It becomes more like the NBA game and less of the team defensive end of it and the offensive end of it. How do you put in a defensive scheme in with people that are there for a couple of months? So it's changed the game, but it is what it is. It's the reality of what it is. Uh, and so we have to deal with it, and you look back and learn from it, because I think if the NCAA had done something years ago and gave players a stipend, because you weren't allowed to work. My dad was sending me $2 a month when I was at Notre Dame. I didn't have the same experience other kids at Notre Dame had. I didn't have any money. And if I had a little stipend to be able to do some things, it certainly would have enhanced my education. So I do think
yeah.
their
Experience.
players should get something. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, let me ask you this. We'll dating back. What's something you did in the pandemic that you didn't do before that you still do today that you use? Can you some that
Could you repeat
comes to
that?
mind? What's something you do in the pandemic that you didn't do before that you do today still?
I'm missing the one. What the epic
Yeah, but during the pandemic, there was something you did
during the
before.
pandemic? Oh, during the pandemic?
Yeah,
Oh, that's a great
that you
question.
do that you do before that you haven't done that you
That's
carried on after.
That's such a great question. That I really love the question because we just talked about that last night.
Yeah,
I told my
okay.
wife, I said, during the pandemic, it was an awful time for the world, but it was a good time for us because we did more things together. We took
Yeah,
walks, we played the guitar a lot. And my goal was
okay.
to learn Spanish. Estoy estudiando español para 2 años durante COVID.
Wow.
Miedo a hablar contigo, se tiene práctica más, or I have to practice more. But I did that every day. I think I'm on 2,000, 195 days in a row without missing a lesson in Duolingo. I also got into take care of my body and lifting weights and trying to get on a little bit of a health kick. So those things have, again, you talk about that saying, adversity has the effect. That adverse situation, spent more family time and got to explore, got to try different things that you hadn't done before.
Okay, that's good. Good. Let me ask you this. What is your dream car if you have one?
The dream what?
A dream car. You have a dream car?
Or when
Yeah.
I was a kid, it was a Mercedes 450 SL. I always liked that car. It's a little sports car. That was always my dream, to own a Mercedes. And then, you know, uh, I actually have a Kia Sorento that I love. We were out to dinner last night and I was looking at my car in the parking, like, I love that car. It's probably 6 years old, but it still looks new and I love it and take care of it. In fact, she has the same car in white. I have it in black. Really not a car guy, but that
Yeah.
Mercedes was kind of one of my goals. I remember when I was a kid, my goal was to live in a $100,000 house and drive a Mercedes 450 SL. I didn't know $100,000 would be a track house when I first moved to California, but now certainly those $100,000 are worth 1.2 million. Speaking to the point that we
Yeah.
talked about earlier.
Yeah. What's your thoughts of the EV car, like the Tesla and all that stuff? What are your thoughts on the electric cars?
Yeah, the reason I ask you to repeat sometimes, I think my thing died on this side, so that's why I'm struggling a little bit. But no, I think the electric cars. My son has a couple of them. They're cool. I drove one as a rental. I do think once the batteries are a little longer and you get a little more mileage out of them, they'll
Yeah.
be a great thing. They sure are. They're sure. Coincidentally, Bob Lattiser are calling me here. So I get to call him back. But I think those cars are really cool, and they're really doing some really neat things with them. And I just kind of waiting till they continue to develop it a little more. I don't want to charge my battery, as much as I drive. It wouldn't make any sense for me. But I do think, it's the direction it's going. It's funny. I watched a thing on YouTube 2 nights ago on the '64 World's Fair in New York and Flushing, and I went to that, and I just remember that so vividly, seeing the cars of the future, being laid out and how cool that was to see that. And here we are, the electric cars. And I just saw something again on YouTube. The Chinese manufacturers just showed their cars, and it's fascinating to see where cars are going. But obviously, energy efficient and having a little responsibility and taking care of our planet. And, anything we can do to help is certainly something I would support.
Cool. Let me ask you this. If you can go back in time, what age would you want to pick at and live at if you could go back in time? What age would you pick?
Well, I'm happy where I am, but I think, going back to when you're a kid and, I love going to camp and seeing, 9, 10-year-old kids, you got your whole life ahead of you. I mean, unfortunately, you only have so many hours in a day. And, obviously the problem is kids spend so much time on their phones and not interacting with people, and things
Yeah.
that, we did when I grew up was a simple time. I go back to New Providence, New Jersey. I woke up and you played stickball, with your friends. And then we threw the football around. And then at noon, we went and played basketball at the community pool. And at night, I went and played baseball somewhere. So weekends, you rode your bike to go, Isan's training camp and box a little bit. So we did so many different things. It was just such a fun time. You were never in the house. I
Yeah, you
remember if I
weren't.
was in the house, my father would go, "Get out of here. It's too hot." So,
Yeah.
so I had 4 boys in our family. We were always out being really active. And today, kids are on their phones, and you know what? And I support that if you're studying something. But just playing video games all day, I just don't get it, and I think it's a real waste because there's some wonderful things about being on the internet and learning. There's so much you can learn out there, no matter what it is. Learn about life. Pick a topic that you want to excel at. There's so many valuable tools, but I think they misuse it a little bit, wasting a lot of time. And when you get to be my age, you should realize you only have so many quality years left. You got to use every second of it, embrace it, and have fun, and hopefully make a difference. So when you leave here, maybe your star will shine a little bit in some of the souls of the kids you were able to touch, whether it's being a parent or a teacher, a business leader, or a coach.
Yeah, good points you're sharing there. Do you have a failed field trip you did that you went on as a kid that you remember?
Yeah, going to like Yankee Stadium, when I was a kid. That's my dad. We didn't. My dad was a hard worker. He worked in a factory, he umpired, he cleaned the church. I mean, he always had cut lawns. He had a million jobs. So he was a great father, but he was working. And so we would take the town. The PAL would have field trips, and we'd go to a ball game. And I remember going to Princeton Colgate football games. And that's another thing, Steve, is I think kids today don't see a lot of this, right? Like I remember 1965, I was 12 years old, and I watched New Providence beat Wildwood at Atlantic City and Convention Hall in the state championship. And I just got locked into this, man, this basketball, this feeling of winning a state championship was so important to me. And I read a book called Go Team Go by John Tunis. And in that book, they talk about winning a state championship. And then the team as juniors, they all win it. And then they all rebel against the coach and they end up leaving the team. And he coaches the backups and they go on and win, and I just thought, so it just really spoke to me a lot. And I was always obsessed with keeping that as a goal. But I think the memories of watching Princeton Colgate and seeing those quarterbacks or going to a Yankee game, those things really resonate, or going to that state championship game, they really resonated with me. And I always wanted to be like those guys. I remember being in church. In fact, whenever I go to church, I always receive communion because I just remember being a little kid and being in that fifth pew, Our Lady of Peace. And this guy, John Donor, came walking down the main aisle and he had a Seton Hall varsity jacket on. He was a running back at Seton Hall. And I just remember looking at that guy and going, my God, I want to be like that someday. That kid, just looked like such a strong and tough guy. And I said, I just want to be like that guy. And I often think back to that and say, hey, that kid motivated me, and I hope I want to motivate somebody that way. Maybe if I conduct myself, I
Yeah.
always made it a point to, hey, I'm gonna regress a little bit and tell you about it. One of my greatest guys is a guy named Sid Kitson. Sid Kitson was from New Providence, New Jersey, and he started a solar community in Florida. You can look it up. He's been on the cover of Time magazine. Sid Kitson is a world changer. This guy, he's one of the greatest men to live. He played for the Green Bay Packers, and I was talking to my high school coach, and last night, he's in his 90s, and he said, "I went to play golf with Sid, and he talked about you, and he always says that he went to a football camp." And Sid's told me this story, but my coach related. He said, he told me when we were playing golf, he said, my life changed when Frank Allocco threw me a pass. He said he was at this camp and he called me over and he threw me like 4 passes. He had his Notre Dame jersey on and all this. And he said, and he called me over. He said, son, you're going to be great. You just keep working hard and believe in yourself and have a positive attitude and set some goals and you're going to be special. And Sid told me, and he's told coach, he said, my life changed that day. So I don't know, I don't have that kind of influence, but it did to him, so you never know what word you say or what kindness you say to a person, or if the example of receiving communion on a Sunday, you never know what impact that's going to have on people. And I wish we had more role models like that. And I wish we had kids that would get off the phone and go out and go watch and do things and try to strive to be like the kids that they see.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so going back to the Yankees game, what player did you see play when you were growing up that were at the stadium? I'm trying to
Well,
think what
well,
era.
Elston Howard was the catcher. Bill Skowron was the first baseman. Bobby Richardson at second base. Tony Kubek at shortstop. Clete Boyer at third base. And you had Yogi Berra in left. Mickey Mantle in center field. Roger
Wow.
Maris in right field. I still have the scrapbook from 1961. I have every
Wow.
game in a scrapbook. And it was
That's
the year
crazy.
that Mantle and Maris had the home run derby. They were neck and neck in the 50s, and then Mantle got an
Yeah.
abscess on his hip, and he missed a bunch of games. He ended up with 56, and Roger hit 61. But I got to see that, on TV every day, and I'm a big Yankee fan to
Yeah.
this day. But
So
yes,
you enjoy watching Judge out there? You
I
enjoy Judge?
I I do. We got to win. I love Judge. He's one of the greatest players in the game. But we got to win. We got to get another ring, man. We're stuck at 20.
Yeah, I
We
know.
got to get that 28th ring. But I'm a huge Yankee fan. So is my son Frank, and most of our family. We're all diehard Yankee guys.
Let me ask you this. So you're are you a baby boomer, I'm guessing?
Am I what?
In the generation, are you baby boomer? What generation are you on,
I
baby
don't know what
boomer
they
or
I don't know
silent?
what they I don't know what they call us. I think so. I mean, I was born in '53, so that's a little bit after the war.
Yeah, so you're a baby boomer, yeah.
Yeah, be a baby
So what
boomer.
are your thoughts as far as with the technology with AI and kids today with the cell phone? I know you're still a little bit about it, but the tech, iPads today, well, we have like growing up, we didn't have that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's two things. I mean, one, it can be an incredible tool for knowledge, but also can make you lazy. If you're going to depend on it to make every decision for you and write papers for you and do other things. So I think all of this stuff is very good when used as a tool to enhance you. But we can't just have AI represent who we are. You might as well make a robot, that's just programming what Frank Allocco acted like and be it. But there's this personal connection, this human connection that is so important. I can remember being at De La Salle and Greg St. Jean. I keep mentioning Greg, but I remember senior day. He wrote a note, and I read it to our team. And he said, "There's going to be a time when he looks at you, and he's going to point at you, and he's going to pound his heart." And he said, "And I miss that more than anything." When he used to look at me, and I knew when he pounded his heart, he's telling me, "I love you, and I would do anything for you, and I want you to do the same for me." And Greg said that's what he missed the most. And so, how do we got to have that human connection. We really do. And so, but I do embrace it. Like I said, I'm on the internet quite a bit trying to learn, but you got to use it for positive stuff. You just can't be scrolling social media and all that. Use it as a tool, and it's a great thing.
Yeah, yeah. Let me ask you this. So, I go back to the South. What are some players that stood out to you that you coached that were good players that you can
There's so
name
many of
off?
them. I
Yeah,
hate to just
yeah,
name one, but
yeah. You
obviously
name a few of them
I
if you
had
want.
a lot of them. Joe
Yeah,
C, Chris
yeah,
Schlatter, Connor from Muehliner,
yeah,
Marcus Schroeder, Lincoln guy, Justin Joyner,
yeah,
Greg
yeah,
St. Jean was special to me.
yeah,
I'll tell you a guy who wasn't a superstar, Jordan Clark, who really, I don't think he ever started a game, but he's probably one of my guys that embraced what we taught the most. And he just became a doctor, and he wrote me a beautiful note. He's going to come back to the Bay Area and practice out here. And he sent me a beautiful note, and it said, it all started with you challenging me. And I remember that kid couldn't make a set of lines, and he would quit and he would give up. And we kept pushing him to get better and embrace the toughness of it. And here he goes to law, he goes to med school and just lives what was taught to him. I mean, I'm so proud of that particular guy. So he really stands out as a guy that, really went on and did wonderful things. Dan Pira, a guy that, was not a great athlete, and went on to play college basketball at Rice, and he never made an A team from CYO all the way up to De La Salle and, played very sparingly for us, but, you know, became a great player at Rice because he was a great teammate. And he could shoot the ball a little bit. He had a good knowledge of the game. He was limited athletically, but what a heart that kid had. And he went on to do wonderful, wonderful things. So there's a lot of obvious names, when you look at
yeah, yeah,
the De La Salle tree going back. There's so many special guys that I was lucky enough to coach, and I always get asked who was the best player. I would never get
yeah,
involved in that. They were all good. And it wasn't who we were. We
yeah,
were team oriented. It was all
yeah.
about the team, and everybody gave up themselves. That state championship in 2006, I think 13 kids got scholarships off that team.
Wow.
And Lincoln Gunn was our leading scorer at 10.1, going down, started. Ethan Niedermeyer's averaged 4 a game and went to Portland and became team captain and a starter. So all those kids, they knew how to play, and they were very willing to let the numbers go aside, that it's all about the team. They embraced the team concept, and we need more of that in our country, where we just band together and let's be a team. Let's not be divided and worry about individual things. And I get
100%.
back to the NIL, that is not teaching that. So
Yeah.
we need to keep embracing it. If you talk to Marcus or anybody else that I've coached, they'll say, I always used to say, fight the good fight. There's only a few of us left. We got to keep fighting this fight and keep leading the right way and teaching kids to love each other and put yourself second for the good of the team. And maybe we can get this thing righted and back to where it should be.
Cool. Good thoughts. That's a good share. Is there a movie you recently watched that you saw and liked in the theater or on TV or something?
I go to the movies a lot, and I can't say that I've seen a great movie lately. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Instructions Not Included, which has a real interesting story about a very selfish guy that ends up raising a daughter by himself, and it has a really beautiful twist at the end of the movie that really always struck me. But I haven't seen a great movie, and I'm a
Yeah.
movie aficionado. One of my
Yeah.
favorite movies is Forrest Gump. I like The Big Fish. I love that story of the big fish, little big man. I just love stuff that are emotional. I wanna leave feeling good. I'm an emotional guy. I like to cry, so I like to watch a movie that really tugs at my heartstrings and it makes me be emotional. Like when I watch sporting events, I just end of a game when a guy makes a winning shot, it just gets to me. I just love that emotion that you feel when you did something. I remember at Northgate, we won the state championship and watching those kids, celebrate on the floor and going, "Oh my god, we actually did this," this crazy dream that we had in it. De La Salle, watching the kids making snow angels at center court at Arco when they won. It was just so much fun to see how much it meant to them, to see that the success and the fruition of everything they did, the sacrifices that may come to fruition. It was pretty beautiful. And that is what I want to hear. That's what I want to see in movies. That's what I want to hear in music. I want to be touched emotionally every day. I always say this, Steve, you should try to find a moment of passion every day. What was your moment of passion?
Yeah.
You know, it could be holding your newborn baby, it could be a great business deal or maybe, helping somebody cross the street. What are you doing every day to find a real moment of passion when you connect at emotional level with another human being?
No, that's great advice. Good share. Yeah. That is good. Have you experienced the 40X yet in theater? Where the sheet kind of shakes, that stuff? Or no?
No, no.
No.
Where's there one around here?
So IMAX, I think what's the thing in Concord? They built that shopping center. But Skylink's kind of where that has the IMAX has it, but yeah, they've done like Lighter Two's been in there. The Phone was in there. Not Incredible, the Avengers and stuff they've had. But the
Yeah,
shit kind of shakes. I've seen a couple. It's pretty cool.
that
So,
would be cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
At Disneyland Field when they used to
yeah,
do that
there.
Disneyland. Yeah.
Let me ask you this: Are you an Apple or Android guy?
App
Are you an Apple or Android guy as far as the phone?
Apple.
Yeah.
Apple.
Okay.
I'm all
Yeah.
Apple.
So,
I have Apple computer, Apple phones, everything's Apple Watch. I got it all. Well, and because I do a lot of design work, I do Photoshop and InDesign, a lot of the Adobe products I use. I created most of the motivational stuff that I had at De La Salle, and even
yeah.
here at work, with USF, I do a lot of the marketing, and I'm running a golf tournament on Monday, and I'm doing everything, all the artwork for
Cool.
that. So for design tools, I like the Apple products. I think they're great when you have to manipulate photos or create documents or books or whatever you're doing.
And so if you see the green bubble pop up on your phone, what do you think of?
Green bubble?
Yeah, they're not. Remember, it's blue is Apple, green is Android. So, what's your thoughts on that when that pops up?
I don't think I've seen it pop up very much other than when I get a
No.
message.
Okay.
Well, I'm missing something. I don't get that. It's weird.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe all your friends have Apple, so you're good. So yeah,
Yeah. See,
yeah. Um, you want to share a tip of the week, life tip, success tip that you gone through time or
I really think it is, put yourself second for the good of the team. And I just, I was blessed. My dad, like I said, is a factory worker. My mother was a crossing guard, but man, what an example they were for me. I watched them doing community service. I watched them, my mother was 94 years old, still making sandwiches for, underserved people in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And, she's amazing. I got to watch this, I watched my dad, take care of his best friend was a priest. And when the priest died, he took care of his sister, who never married. My dad would go to her house. He was in her 80s and he took care of her. He did everything for her. And when she died, he took on her brother, and he was smart. He moved her to our town, so he didn't have to drive as far. But my dad's always was like that. He was a volunteer fireman for 67 years. I mean, I just think when you elevate others, in essence, you elevate yourself, when you put yourself second and do wonderful things. I think there's nothing more powerful than giving somebody else the credit, for what you do. So to me, it's that, don't get, you want to have your goals, but success is not measured in the ultimate fulfillment of the goal. Some of my best teams were teams that didn't win, but they worked so hard. They did what they do. And, I think so. You got to look at it that way. Like all those things I've talked about. This is kind of a good question because it brings it all together. The perspective of a Bill Bradley, like to turn down, to go get educated, to go do wonderful things. To me, I really love that. I love what I told you earlier about it was never my job to be the guy. It was my job to create the guys, and I love doing that. And there's not a day in my life that I look back and say, I wish I could have, been the All-American quarterback at Notre Dame, or I wish I could have coached college basketball. I don't feel any of that. I just feel like no matter what I'm doing, I want to make people feel really good about themselves, and it makes me feel good. And so that's the advice I would give everybody. You'll be really successful if you stop worrying about you and go live and serve other people.
Totally. Good thoughts, good points. Let me ask you this. Who do you want to sit down and eat with, dead or alive? If you could pick somebody, who would it be?
If I could what?
If you could sit down and eat with somebody, dead or alive, who would you be? Who would you pick to eat with?
John F. Kennedy. I was a Kennedy guy, from the time I was a kid. I always loved him. I campaigned for John F. Kennedy when I was 6 years old.
Wow.
It's funny. Seriously, I could turn the camera to show you, but I have a bumper sticker. I've got all sorts of pictures, and I got buttons from that time. I went door to door passing out flyers for John F. Kennedy when I was 6 years old. And I remember you know, the, uh, the ticket was Kennedy, Johnson, Thorne, Lord. I thought that was interesting. Thorne, like thorns, and Lord.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the ticket that year, and I passed out those flyers. So that's ingrained in my head for my whole life. But, watching Kennedy in action, and I got involved in the civil rights movement, and all the things that we did. It was a period of time where, the Peace Corps, that's who America was at that time. We were the Peace Corps. We were out doing wonderful things and help build communities and train people and all the stuff that we did. So that really truly was Camelot. And I'll tell you, his assassination to this day, that's one of the things I watch on YouTube a lot. It is I can't believe the impact it had on my life. I was 10 years old, but I still remember every single bit of it. So without a doubt, it would probably be John F. Kennedy. He's always one of my personal heroes.
Good one. Yeah, I've heard him a couple of times, but yeah. So you know, now if you're stuck on an elevator, who do you want to be stuck in the elevator with? If you pick a person, who would it be?
I'd have to say, collectively, my grandchildren.
Yeah.
I adore my grandchildren. Molly, my oldest, is a diver at Stanford. She's one of the best divers in the world, in the country. She won the Western Regional in the NCAA. She made all ACC as a freshman. She's incredible, and she's a nice kid. I just love being around her. And Brady, I really admire Brady. Brady was a sophomore team captain at Northgate basketball. He really was a very good basketball player, and he made a decision that I want to play golf. And I just thought that took such courage to sort of give up the family game, right? And
Yeah,
go
yeah,
do
yeah,
something different. And he's working so hard at trying to become great at it. And I keep telling him it just intrigues me that the time he puts in, it's like what I just told you earlier. It's not whether he becomes a great golfer or not. It's what courage it took to do that, right? And then Frankie's
yeah.
children, he has three children, and they love playing basketball, but they're very, very good kids. So I'm just very blessed to be around and to live 5 minutes away, from them, and see all my grandkids as much as I do. Really, really. So I'd say that I really enjoy spending time with them and want to spend more time with them in the future, so that would be
Yeah,
it.
that's a good one. Let me ask you this: so, favorite sports team and player that you like watching? If you're, going to pull up
Well,
any,
the Yankees I
yeah,
watch, but nothing compares to Notre Dame football. I just love Notre Dame football. And I think CJ Carr In fact, my grandson Brady and I argue about this. I said this when he was struggling in game one. I said, that will be the greatest quarterback to ever play at Notre Dame. I mean, that kid is electric. He's got a cannon. He's got great vision. He's a wonderful kid. He's the kind of kid you'd want to have as your son, but talented, studies the game, all those things that I've been talking about. He represents it. So I love watching that kid play football. I really, really do. And I love football. I always told Lad I'd like to be his offensive coordinator because I love setting things up. And in fact, the Princeton offense, that's what it was to me. It's like the wing tee of basketball where everything looks the same and you can call different looks out of it and all that. So, yeah, so my favorite team to watch, Notre Dame, without a doubt. Yankees would be second. And my favorite player, would be CJ Carr.
Cool. All right. Now, did you watch wrestling as a kid growing up? Fake wrestling? Did you watch any of that, or was that kind
No,
of
I never got into stuff like that. I never cared. I watched boxing. I loved Muhammad Ali when I was a kid, and we had a training camp up the street from us, Isan's training camp, and I would ride my bike up there and watch those guys train. I watched Hurricane Carter train there, and Floyd
wow?
Patterson. So we were kind of into boxing back in the day. That was popular. We used to have the Friday night fights and all that. Wrestling, I
Yeah.
never got into, but I always did like boxing
Shit.
and loved Muhammad Ali. Went back to the when Notre Dame played in the regionals, uh, Sweet 16. My nephew Matt Allocco was playing there, and I went back to watch him play. And I went to the Muhammad Ali Museum. Unbelievable! I mean, the difference that man made in civil rights, and what he stood for. He's sort of an exemplary guy, an amazing athlete, and a better person.
Cool. Let me ask you this: what advice would you give yourself at 12 years old? Gonna go back in time.
Listen to your mother and father.
Yeah.
We all think they don't know anything, but it's just to listen. I kind of was lucky that I was raised with a faith. My parents are very, very devout Catholics, and having that background of faith and spirituality has always been a comfort to me. And my dad his best friends were always priests. So Father Darty, Father Delaney, Father Me, these guys were in our house all the time. Tuesday nights they came for dinner. Sometimes they'd come and stay with us for 2 or 3 days. And to watch those guys in action, they were real priests who just really served their communities. They were like Bing Crosby and Going My Way or the Bells of St. Mary's. In fact, Father Delaney was a painter. I have his picture, one of his paintings that he did, a landscape, so I still remember. And that's one of my things, Steve, is I like to have, things from everybody. Like my dad, I got his thing from the firehouse, when he died. My dad
Yeah.
was a volunteer fireman for 67 years. So, I like to have little tidbits. Every time I mail a letter, I think of my father-in-law. I have his stamp thing. When people
Yeah.
pass away, that's what I like. I like a piece of them so they could still be a part of my life because they were such a big part of my life that I want to be
Totally.
reminded every day of them and be challenged to try to live up to the standard that they set.
Yeah. So that's great. Um, how long you been a homeowner for? What do you like about the city you live in? I know you live, I think, Concord or Walnut Creek, but what do you like about the area and stuff?
I just love this area because there's so many things to do. I like the weather, obviously. I'm into golf, so I love playing golf. There's a lot of good golf courses around here, but you can drive 45 minutes to go to Napa. You can drive 2.5 hours to get to Tahoe, or go to Monterey. I mean, what a beautiful place.
Yeah.
We live in, and yeah, so I just like every aspect of, from the weather to the people to the beauty of it, the ability to change directions, change climate, within a couple of hours of driving wherever you drive. So I never thought I would stay here. I didn't want to come. I fought it. My company transferred me out here, and
Well.
he said, want you to go there. And I said, there's no chance I'm ever leaving New Jersey. I'm going to live in New Providence, coach till I die. And they
Yeah.
said, go try it for a year, you know, and that was
Yeah.
50 years ago. And I ain't going nowhere. I love it here, so I've been very blessed to be in a great, great area.
So what's your favorite golf course around here that you like playing?
And I get to
Boundary
play
or
the
you
I get to play the Olympic Club with some of the USF people, so that's a really
nice.
beautiful course. I get to do that, but, I hit balls at Buchanan a lot. They have a guy. I love this guy that took over there. His name Kiwi.
Yeah, the Sky Links is pretty nice. Yeah, I was over
It's
there
unbelievable
last
what that
week.
guy's done.
Yeah.
I saw him, yesterday, and I told him what that guy has done. Talk about a great human being. That guy has captivated this community. I mean, He's got jumpy house. I mean, if you have kids, you need to go there on a weekend and hit some balls and let your kids run around and play because he's so family friendly. He's changed this community. And again, there's a guy that puts himself second for the good of the team. And as a result of it, he's doing very, very well. But he should be because, he just gives and gives and gives in that place. So I go there a lot to hit balls. I do play at Boundary. I do play at San Ramon. I go to Brentwood when I can. And I've been playing with my grandson a lot, which I really enjoy since he took it up. Pretty soon he's going to be beating me pretty regularly because he's getting a lot better. And I can't hit the ball as far as we used to. I have to remind him sometimes when he outtries me by 60 yards that I have clothes that are older than him.
Good one. That's funny. Let me ask you this. So if you want your current job right now for work, what would you see yourself be doing instead?
That's a great question. I like writing. I want to write.
Yeah.
I'm writing this book and I was really going hot and heavy on it. And now I just got really busy at work. And so I haven't done it, but I love to write. I mean, I really just see myself writing. I want to finish this book that I'm working on now, and then I'll do another one. I just want to continue to write books. I do enjoy that particular aspect of it. So it's not a job, but, uh, you know, that's kind of what I would see myself doing in the next stage is writing. And the current knows where it's going. And so I don't really ever plan. I just let the plan take me where it should be. So, when the USF period ends and I move on to a different period of my life, and I'm sure when that time is revealed, it'll be the right thing for me and I'll do whatever I do. I'll always be involved in the community because I love it. I just love
Yeah,
being
yeah.
around kids and doing whatever I can to help kids, inspire kids.
And how long you been at USF now? You've been there for
10
how many years?
years, 10 years. Yeah, went fast.
I'll be coming up my 10th year at De La Salle in next
That's
winter.
awesome.
So yeah,
That's great.
crazy. Yeah, let me ask you this one. You got a favorite board game that you played growing up that sticks out to you, or
Well,
video game?
play Monopoly, obviously, and there was a great baseball game that my son Frank was obsessed with called APBA baseball, and it was a dice game, but if you played the whole season out, they said statistically it would almost come out the exact same as the season. So we used to have a draft. When I first moved to California, I brought it out here, and we did a draft. I don't know if you know Brian Sullivan, my 24-year assistant coach, and he's the principal at Los Lomas High School now. But Brian lived down the street from me, and him and Mike Sullivan, his older brother, we had this draft, and it was the 75 season. The Reds were really good. There's some really good teams. And Mike had the first pick of the draft and he picked Roy White from the Yankees. Like we're all going, Roy White, he was like a 250 hitter, where'd you come up with that? He goes, well, I always liked him. So that board game, I love that game. And we played that quite a bit. And actually it kind of got you to be a good coach because you could, call for a hit and run or steal and you could sub players in. So we used to have a draft and then we played it out. Again, getting back to my what I told you earlier, I always wanted to coach. So I started coaching through APBA when I was like 9 years old with my brother Jerry. My brother Jerry had the game and we all played it.
Cool. Let me ask you this. Oh, you don't drink. So drink of choice. What are you drinking? Like lemonade? What's your drink of choice you're drinking?
Iced tea,
Iced tea.
green tea.
Okay.
I'm a big green tea guy. I love green tea. I think it's good for you.
Okay. And do you have a guilty pleasure?
Buttered popcorn at the movies. Probably not the healthiest thing to do, but I love buttered
Yeah.
popcorn. I don't drink caffeine, but I'll have a Coke icy with popcorn when I go to the movies. That's my little
Okay.
guilty pleasure. I know it's not good for me, but I do it
Yeah.
whenever I go to the movies.
And then do you share emojis with anybody? Emojis? Do you have a favorite emoji you use?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. Just when I text or something, I
yeah.
have a little gift that I use. Me and it's a Yankee hat, with the
Okay.
glasses. It looks like me a little bit. So I do that, and I do. I'm not too bad with social media. I obviously, like I said, I use Adobe products. I try to learn all that kind of stuff. In fact, during COVID, that's why I was telling young people, go study Photoshop, learn how to cut film. You want to be a college coach, learn how to cut film. First step. You know. So there's always things out there now that you could try to get better at.
And then who'd be a good person to not maybe on the show? I know you might have a couple people I could reach out to, but who'd be a good guest I could interview? Put them on the spotlight.
You've got have you had Lad on?
No,
Obviously
I
he's
haven't.
really good.
No, I
Yeah,
haven't. I'll reach out to
he'd be
him.
great. I think Frankie's really good. Frankie, my son, does great stuff. I think Frankie was probably
Yeah.
one of the greatest competitors ever to play in this area. Northgate, he was really the catalyst that got kids to believe in each other and play for each other. Those kids were remarkable because they went to Arbolado Park every day and just played on their own. They weren't doing open gyms. They just said, we're going to win. And it all started when we lost in a NorCal final. Jimmy Croy and Lou Caballero, Adam Roberts, they're great players. And those kids saw those kids crying in the locker room after the game, and they determined, hey, we're going to win. And they really went after it. But Frankie really was a great leader, 5'9", not incredibly talented as a player, but just a winner, and went to St. Mary's and played there and won there. He just is, and now he's at Clayton Valley. He's built a tremendous program, won 2 section titles in his first 3 years. But more importantly, it's the way he does it. So I think as an athlete and as a coach, he's somebody that really has a lot of wisdom and somebody that might be worth speaking to. And also
Okay.
Brian Sullivan, my other guy that coached at De La Salle for years. Brian's a
Okay.
principal, and they're another example of a guy that learned the tools to go do the next thing. He's not coaching
Yeah.
anymore, but he's coaching. He's
Yeah.
coaching at Las Lomas.
Yeah.
So I think I always love people that can take the tools they've learned and transfer it into something else.
Cool. And
Yep.
then something on the bucket list you want to do you haven't done yet. What's out there? Yes, on the bucket list.
I want to go to an SEC football game. I really want to go watch Alabama play Tennessee, or, I love
Or
going to Notre
LSU.
Dame, but I would love to go see I'm probably going to do that soon. Go to an SEC game. I love doing that kind of stuff. But I'm a pretty simple guy. I mean, I love playing the guitar. I play the guitar, and I like to, I'd love to go to Central Park. I do that sometimes. I go to Washington Square in Central Park and just play the guitar there. That's kind of my thing. It doesn't take much to please me, but that's one of the things I really, really enjoy is listening to music and playing music too.
Cool. And last one, Frank. So how do we find you and be in touch with if you want to reach out to you? And maybe I know you're at USF a lot, but how do people want to reach out to you? How do we find you on social media or your own that?
Well, I have a website,
Okay.
frankallocco.com,
Okay.
which I have. And obviously you can email me at the university, you go to the directory and pick it's a F as in Frank, then Allocco at
Okay.
usfca.edu. And I enjoy when people reach out, and I don't
Yeah.
like coaches. Sometimes I always tell them, don't hesitate to ask me. You're not bothering me. I love
Yeah.
interacting with people. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm still out there. I'm still doing a lot of speaking. I'm going to St. Ignatius High School next week. I'm
Okay.
speaking to not next week, the 13th and 14th. I'm speaking to 2 classes out there. So I love going out and speaking to places and really enjoy doing stuff like that. So I'm still very active with what I've always loved doing.
Cool. And then we're on Spotify. You'll see us on TikTok, all that stuff with our show on the spot. Any questions about real estate, reach out to me. And then any final thoughts before we get in, Frank?
No, it's a pleasure to speak to you. I remember you, from years and
Yeah.
years ago. So I
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
remember you, and I appreciate what you've done. And I think what you've done in real estate, I love your philosophy of the way you approach real estate. You're a
Yeah.
server. You're trying to
Just
place people where they need to be. And I always say, I'm going to leave you with this thought. Everything in life is how you define what you do. I asked somebody one day, "What do you do?" "I sell insurance." I said, "Really?" "I think you provide futures and security for families." It's how you define what you do. We all can take the level of what we do and do it like Lattiser with my thing. I'm not the external relations director. I'm a coach. I'm out there trying to make the community better. So how do you define what you do? And if it's a sincere definition, then you do what you do. And I like your profile, what you've done and the way you approach your real estate. I checked you out and I went on some of your social stuff, and I just love your approach to it and
thanks.
just serving the community. So keep up the good work,
Thanks.
and keep
Appreciate it,
on
guys.
doing
This
what
is
you do at De La Salle
yeah.
too. It's
Yeah.
be the
That's
best
a
of
good
both
community over
worlds.
there.
Yep.
Appreciate it. So from
Yeah.
on the spot, right here.
All right. Thanks, buddy. Appreciate you.
All right, we're done.